All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for having me today. Like Judy said, my name is Jacqui Arias. I'm a bilingual speech-language pathologist. I'm also the co-founder of Habla Cadabra SLP. This is a company that is really focused on supporting bilingual communication, and so my partner and myself, we work on creating materials and resources in Spanish for the communities that we work with, and then we also do a lot of consultations as well. So if you have any questions or you'd like to know a little bit more about that, I did put a QR code right here so you can get to that website. We also have an Instagram. If you guys are into Instagram, then that's a good way to follow us too. I find myself doing lots of different things at lots of different times, so that's a good way to kind of get an idea of where we are or what we're doing. I consider myself, I love being a speech-language pathologist, but I also really consider myself to be a collaborator. And so the things that we're going to talk about today are focused on communication, but I also hope to give you guys ideas of ways that you are collaborating with many other disciplines. Speech is only going to be one part of your team. And so we're like the Avengers, like you get one of us, but you still need a lot more. And so we'd really like for you to at least have an idea of what a speech pathologist is, who to collaborate with, and then also please feel free to always reach out to me if you ever just want a little bit more information or need help or need a referral or anything you might need. So, all right, moving on. Today what we're going to be talking about is just giving a specific definition of what is communication. I think a lot of times when we think about our kids with communication difficulties, we really get stuck on whether or not they're speaking well or using words, and there's a lot more to communication than that, so we're going to be talking about that today. I also really want to deep dive a little bit into what are the specific communication deficits that we see in children with autism, what are the ones that are the most common, and what are some of the other things that we might need to see as well. And then we're going to touch on a couple of strategies that we can use when working with children with autism. There's so many. So again, please feel free to reach out if you want more help. Please also feel free to stop me if you have any questions throughout the presentation today. I don't mind if something in my slides is unclear or something that I'm saying you would like some more clarity on, just please raise your hand and let me know and we can stop and I'll clarify, and then we'll also have time for questions at the end. Okay, so before we get any further, I just want to ask you guys, what is your definition of communication? Yes, ma'am?
How we interact.
How we interact, okay. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am? How we express ourselves. How we interact, how we express ourselves. One more. Yes. Can you yell it for me? Verbal and physical communication, yeah. So I love all of these things. How we interact. So interacting is not only just like what we're saying, but also just the way that we're giving back and forth, right? How we express ourselves. And then Sheila touched on it really well, of it's not only what we say, but then also like what we're doing with our bodies. Yeah, when we look at just what is communication, it's sending and receiving messages. As a millennial, I do a lot of sending and receiving messages on my phone. So just to kind of get us into that mind of why we're communicating, I thought I would show you a couple of messages that I sent, only appropriate ones. I just copied a few as I was making this presentation, and what I want us to do is to just kind of look at these messages, and I want you to think about not necessarily how I'm expressing myself, but why I'm expressing myself. What are the reasons why I was sending these messages? Okay, first one. Simple, right? I love you too. Why? What was the reason behind that message I sent? Yeah, just to let somebody know, just to share my emotions. I just wanted to let them know how I feel, okay? Mrs. S. I have an appointment tomorrow. I don't think I'm going to make it back in time for Kay's appointment. Could we move her session to Tuesday? What was the reason behind that message? being informed. Yeah. Okay. Somebody sent me a meme. And then I said, oh, yeah, you knew a kid was fancy if they had that cheese in their lunchbox. We keep talking about our childhood. What was the reason behind that message? Somebody said something. I didn't hear it. Humor, just to share, like share emotions, continue a conversation. It wasn't about getting my needs met. It wasn't because I needed something or I wanted somebody not to do something. Just having a social connection. This is very similar. My sister just had a baby, so I'd sent her some Instagram video about like birth recovery. Same thing too. The reason behind what do you think the reason behind this message was? Just to connect. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to connect. I think a lot of times when we think about communication, we get really, really stuck on, well, we want to get our needs met, which is really important. But also there's a lot of different reasons that we communicate. And when we're talking about, if we think communication is about expression and interaction, there's so many things in our minds that we want to express, and there's so many ways that we want to interact with people. And so before we talk about all the different strategies, I really want us to also kind of think about what are the different reasons why we ourselves are communicating and why our kids may be communicating as well. So, because even from infancy, communication is beyond about just getting our needs met. I talked about my little sister. She just had her first baby, and so a lot of the communication that's happening with her and her baby right now is just making sure he's fed and seeing if he's hungry or if he's dirty. But she's been like trying really hard just for like a semi-smile of just so for her, that part is really exciting, and it is for the baby too, because that's how we learn, and actually that's how all children learn to develop communication, is through interaction. So when we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of why that can be really hard for kids with autism, I think it's really important to understand that underlying issue is we need to think about the reasons why children are communicating. And as Dr. Ken put earlier too, like, well, a lot of times when we see behaviors, there's usually an underlying something to that. And so a lot of times when we see kids with autism, maybe they might be communicating in ways that we don't expect. But if we kind of pause and stop and look and see, okay, what's the reason behind this? It can give us really important insight in helping them to be able to communicate more clearly and helping ease their frustration. Oh, I didn't even talk about the 4 main categories. There's so many reasons why we communicate. I usually can group them into about 4. So one is making our needs known. This is typically one of the first ones that we address in therapy. And also I think it's a lot easier for people to work on because it's a little bit more like, you say this, you get this. So making our needs known is, I want something, making a request. Also telling people when you don't want something. Being able to protest, maybe asking for help can kind of fall under this category as well. And also like letting people know when you need them to stop doing something. So this has to do with getting what you want and letting people know what you don't want. Very important skill. Starting a conversation. This is greeting people, showing somebody something, sending a meme, whatever. It's just initiating that initial interaction. Keeping the conversation going. These are ways that we might comment or ask questions or, again, to keep showing people things. That's how we keep a conversation going, keep that interaction going back and forth. And then the last one is to share feelings. We share a lot of our feelings, and actually it's really hard for adults to do this sometimes too in a way that everybody else can understand. But I actually think we'd all have much better relationships if we knew and we were able to build our skills for all of these reasons. So this is something really important to keep in mind on your child's journey, is that we're building communication across all of these, because if you're getting all of these 4 categories, you are really aiding a child in being able to build their relationship building skills and also their communication, because you're going to stop real quick if you can only communicate about getting what you want. Okay, so let's talk about how we communicate. I'm going to a big family potluck tomorrow, and I'll be coordinating with my teenage son about when we're going, and that's always an argument whenever we go somewhere because he always wants to leave way before I want to leave. So I kind of just want us to imagine we're at a party, and whoever you came with, they're across the room, so it's not really appropriate for you to like yell like, hey, I'm ready to go, or let's get out, like I'm done. How else would you communicate that you're ready to go? So you're laughing. What do you do? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so he said he would text his wife, right? So he could write down a message. He'd also do this, right? Yeah, so using like a little head nod, like a head gesture. I'm Colombian, so we do a lot with our chin, like, like pointing to the door. I might look at the clock and then like look at there, or I might like, look at my keys or look at my watch. There's a lot of different ways that we can kind of show what we're thinking about or communicate a message. And I bet if you did that to your wife, if you were like this, she knows exactly what you're trying to say. And similarly, even if she just like looks at you like you know exactly what you did, right? So there's so many underlying ways that we can communicate with people that don't even rely on words. That's still communication, and that's really valid communication as well. All right, so the same thing happens with our children. Children are not born being able to immediately speak in sentences. And even when you become an adult, I can speak in sentences. I can speak in rapid fire sentences, but that's not my only form of communication. I use my facial expressions. I use a lot of gestures. I really enjoy using pictures and videos. There's multiple ways that we can communicate with others. And so as kids are growing and developing their communication skills, there's a lot of other things that we want to help them build and develop beyond just words, but words are also very important. So things like touching other people, looking, not only being able to look at what they want, but to be able to look at you, pointing, gesturing, head shakes, those are important, head gestures, those are great too, waving, making sounds, just babbling, crying and whining, that is communication. Moms and dads can tell you really quick, oh, I know that cry. First of all, that cry is my child, and that cry means he needs X, X, Y, and Z. And facial expressions as well. Facial expressions also do a lot to communicate what we say. So those are kind of what we kind of think about as early communication skills. I really want to share a clip of this video. This is a mom who has a child with autism, and he does some really, really cool things. Her child isn't using spoken words right now, but he does a lot of really, really cool communicative things so that they can have back and forth interactions. So hopefully the video works.
No, we can't. No, we can't. No, we can't. We could do it downstairs. We could do it in our apartment. No, we can't.
All right, can anybody tell me some of the things that they noticed this child doing that were communicative actions? Pointing, yeah. Head nodding. Sounds, looking, yep. Great, you guys are amazing. Better than my grad student, so that's awesome. Yeah, pointing, looking, making sounds. This mom is also working with him on signs, so his signs are not as clear as hers. So he's like used can in this one. I think later on we'll watch more, and he does like can and yes and no and please and thank you. So this again is all forms of expression. So what we kind of consider more like verbal communication or symbolic communication, echolalia. So I think a lot of you guys might be familiar with echolalia, but if not, echolalia is kind of like a couple of different ways it could be defined. So echolalia is when children like echo or they imitate the things that you say. So you say, oh, do you want to go to the park? Want to go to the park? Right, that's echolalia. Sometimes that can also come out really scripted, so kids will see something that they might see like on a YouTube video or in a movie, and those phrases will come out as well. We call that delayed echolalia. Verbal communication can also be words, just using words, using sentences. It can also be sign language. Some of our kids communicate with sign language. And then also AAC systems. So AAC system stands for augmentative and alternative communication. So augmentative being something that it like helps bolster or support the communication that you're already using, and augmentative meaning or alternative being something that you might use instead of verbally. So this is all kind of combined into one umbrella term. It's really important that I explain that it's all combined together, because sometimes children need augmentative or alternative forms of communication, but having like a system like that, so that could be like a tablet that they use to communicate, a picture board, a PEC system, those are things that don't take away from a child being able to express themselves verbally. It just serves as a way to support them. So there's also been lots of research studies that show that using those types of systems, they don't inhibit a child from vocalizing or from developing speech, but they actually, in most cases, improve their vocalizations and their speech. There's something else that I wanted to say about that. I can't remember, but I'm sure it'll come back to me, or somebody will have a question. There's a lot of different kinds of AAC systems. So if you are ever kind of thinking about, I'm going to talk about it, but in a few minutes. But if you're ever thinking about what are some of the different systems and what's a good one, I would definitely talk to a speech language pathologist. They're going to be probably the specialist that really knows, because they're going to base it based on your child's level of communication and where we want their communication to be. And so certain systems can be a little bit more limiting than others. So it's just important to go through that process with your speech language pathologist. Okay. All right, so let's just talk about some of those primary communication deficits in children with autism. So I took these 3 categories. These are the ones that are really aligned very closely with the DSM-5. So there's some other ones we're going to talk about, but when your child is diagnosed with autism, they have to meet certain criteria on the DSM-5, and these are the ones that they really tend to struggle with. So the first one is, keeping the conversation going. I'm not going to get into the technical spiel about what that looked like on the DSM-5, but really when we're talking about where the struggle is, it's about being able to continue a conversation, being able to continue an interaction. That tends to be really hard for people with autism, because either they want to continue it in one certain way, or it's hard when the topic changes really quickly, or maybe they just don't take a lot of back and forth turns. Particularly with young kids, this can be one that's really difficult. Sharing and understanding feelings. This is not to say that children with autism don't have feelings. We all have feelings. And also that I also get really annoyed too when people say that kids with autism don't have a motivation to interact. That really annoys me, because that's not true either. It's just that there's different ways that they're doing that. And so part of what we do in therapies is working with kids on figuring out ways that they can interact more efficiently or effectively with the people that they care about, and also training the people around them in their lives to connect with them too, because it can't always be about children with autism adjusting themselves to fit what other people need. It also has to be a little bit of a give and take. I would expect that out of any relationship too. So yes, sharing and understanding feelings. So why, and this is going to go into this next category too, about nonverbal forms of communication. Children with autism really tend to struggle with that identifying of emotion. So sometimes it's really hard for them to read what other people are feeling, or they'll know that the emotion is different and they're not really quite sure what to do about it. And it's also because they have a little bit of trouble reading facial expressions. There has been a little bit of research too that has shown that sometimes kids with autism, or actually people on the spectrum, eye contact is something that it almost feels painful for them, uncomfortable. So if you're not really looking at people's eyes and their eyebrows and all that stuff, you miss a lot of the extras. There was a little boy that I used to work with. He was in my class and he had gone on to the next, he had moved up a grade, and I saw him walking on the sidewalk, and I was so excited, love this little boy to pieces. We always had the best time together, and I just go, Robert, right? He saw my hands up, he saw my eyebrows go up, and then my expression changed. It freaked him out. He went under a chair, he was hiding under the table, he started crying. This child and I promise we've never had any negative interactions. I have only been nice to this child, okay? But he was terrified because my expression changed. He could not read what my intention was. That's something that's really, really hard sometimes. It's when they see those changes of an expression, it's not that they don't notice them. They notice them, but they don't know what they mean. And so it feels really uncomfortable. It can cause them to get dysregulated. It causes this little boy to like just go into flight mode. He was scared. And so that's something that we really have to be cautious of too, is that those ability to like read and understand like what's going on or like what people are trying to express, it's not always really clear to them. I see when I used to work in a classroom, a lot of the kids that I would work with, they'd get into fights with their peers a lot. And it wasn't because they weren't nice or they didn't want to be friends. It was just that they had a lot of trouble reading the intentions of their peers. So if they saw a peer running towards them, they'd immediately be like, right? Yeah, see, you guys are laughing because you're like, oh, maybe, yeah, because, and it's not that, it's just sometimes like they don't know what the intention is, and if you don't know what somebody's intention is, you're going to be on the defense. I hope you're on the defense. They're protecting themselves, and so speech therapy too is also kind of about teaching kids about like figuring out, okay, like let's set the scene. What's going on here? What are they planning? Even being able to start working with kids on gestures. So like I'm pointing at this, I'm looking at this. That means I'm probably thinking about this, and maybe I'm gonna head there next. So helping kids start like anticipating what's gonna happen, that can help them a lot too as they're going about their day. Okay, I was trying to see how I'm doing on time. I think I'm okay. I want to talk about some strategies. I focus a lot more on younger kids, as you guys can probably tell, but I do think these strategies are kind of appropriate across the lifespan, but they are definitely more research-based for the younger ones. The first one I want to talk about is just the basis for that interaction. You kindly gave me that definition of like communication is like interaction, right? It's the back and forth. What can be really, really hard when your child is diagnosed with autism is that like you feel like you've lost, it's really hard to connect, or like the things that you're throwing out to your child, like they're not giving them back to you. And so that can feel really isolating as a parent, because I've never met a parent that doesn't want to connect with their child or doesn't want their child to feel successful and communicate. And so part of like what we really want to emphasize and what we want to build before we build on like let's teach them words is we really want to build on like, okay, let's figure out how we can best like get that connection going, because when we have a good connection, we have better attention, we have better focus, we have better learning, and we also have better regulation. And so I think Dr. Ken talked about it a little bit in his about children with sensory difficulties, but that's tends to be what we see in a lot of children with communication difficulties too, is that they have trouble regulating because there's like their sensation. There's a lot of stuff going on in their bodies, and so the more that we can kind of get on their level and connect with what's happening, the easier it is for them to connect with us and to learn. If a child is dysregulated, if they're moving around in their seat, you can be like, you can tell them to do all the flashcards and drills or whatever you want, but I guarantee you it's not going to stay in a long-term way. So this first one is called Serve and Return. I'm going to do my best with sports metaphors because that's not really my area. Okay. But I did play volleyball, so this is the one I felt like I could explain. So in volleyball, right, one partner, she grabs the ball, she starts bouncing it, she like looks at it, and the other person, when they see that server getting ready, like, you know, picking up the ball, they're already anticipating, oh my God, she's about to give me a little something, okay? So she pops it up, she serves it over. That's the serve. Then the other partner, they've already been aware of what's going on. They're looking, they're anticipating, they see the ball, they get it, they return it right back. This is called the serve and return, right? This is also the very basis for all of our conversations. When I'm talking to anybody, I'm looking at them. I might be like looking at my thing, at my phone or whatever, and so we know what we're talking about. We have that shared thing. So once I start, then the other person knows how to return it right back to me. If you guys are not familiar with it, this little baby, he's not a talker yet, but they're watching football in the background, and so this little kid is just so excited to be a part of the football time that he is like pointing and dad's talking back. Dad is responding to this child as if this child is having meaningful conversation, meaningful sentences and words. And because the dad is immediately responding every time that child points or looks at him or like looks at the TV, then the kid is giving another turn back. This is really, really important for kids. I was joking with somebody yesterday about how like I have trouble having conversations with adults when kids are around because I'm so ingrained in my head when a child like does or says something, I gotta respond back. This is gonna be the basis for helping your child improve their joint attention and interaction. When a child initiates, and it could be with pointing, it could be with eye contact, it could be with looking at something, it could be with a head nod, it could be with making a sound or doing a sign, we wanna respond back immediately. Because we want to show them that whenever we initiate communication, it's powerful, it's meaningful, and it gets things done. Because if we want kids to initiate more, we have to show them every time that they try to initiate that it's going to get a response from us. And so this is really the basis for a lot of what we do is serving and returning. This little picture at the bottom, it's a link for the Center for Developing Child at Harvard. They have a whole website about this strategy called Serve and Return. They also have some really nice videos to explain and like look at this in action. So I really encourage families to look at this because it is helpful in explaining. Okay. Inevitably, when I talk about serving and returning, I have families say, well, that's really nice, Jackie, but like my child doesn't really initiate that much. So they don't serve. So then what do I do? Or my child is really in their own world and they're really happy to be in their own world. So I don't even know how to get in there. Okay, that's okay too. Sometimes children with autism really struggle to initiate. They might be better at responding, so they might be better about returning, but it's hard for them to start. It's hard for them to serve. So sometimes we might need to set up the environment in a little bit more of a way to help them initiate, because we want communication to come from inside. If we're always telling a child you need to say this or you need to do this in order to get what you want, at a certain point, kids are going to become really prompt dependent, and so they're always expecting you to like tell them that you need to say something, and then they'll say it. And that's not true communication. And especially when you're not by their side, then what are they going to do? So we really want to encourage children to start learning how to start initiations on their own. And the way that we do that is anytime they do something that could be viewed as an initiation, we want to respond so that they do it more often. Okay, so one strategy that I really love for kids that don't like to initiate very often is just imitation. So in the research on kids with autism, what we also find is that they really do struggle with play skills and imitation skills, whereas younger kids will kind of like observe and then they'll just start imitating and just kind of trying things out. A lot of times, kids with autism are not as good at looking and imitating. And so the way that we teach a child how to imitate is by showing them how fun that is or how great that is. And so we imitate them ourselves. So it's just like this beautiful picture that I have here. When your child does something, you do the same thing with them. I also really love this strategy from when I'm having kids that are having a bad day or that are feeling really exhausted. There's a lot of demands that are placed on our kids. I was speaking with a parent the other day and they said his day starts at 7 is when he leaves the house and it ends at 7. That's when he finally comes home again. I don't even work those kind of hours. I mean, occasionally I do, but I'm not happy when I get home. So I think this is a great strategy, even for your kid that does initiate, because there's times where we want to reduce the demands. We want to show your child, hey, the things you're doing are valid. I don't need to change them right now. I don't need to shape them. I just want to show you, like, I want to connect with you where you're at. Imitation is a beautiful way of showing a kid, I want to connect with you with where you're at. So your child, can I use your son as an example, Sheila? Okay, so Sheila's son, she was just showing me a picture during the break of like this really cool jellyfish thing that they have. So, you know, maybe he's running around with the jellyfish and then she has a jellyfish too and she starts running around with him too. So what happens when we imitate? Well, when you do something and somebody starts copying you, I mean, I know when I see any lady like imitating me, I'm like, So I notice, right? It's going to be the same way with our kids too. When you imitate the actions, it might be actions, it might be sounds, it might be movements. They will look at you. Looking is a great form of an initiation. When they look at you, that's an initiation, that's a serve. Then you have something to return, right? So I love to just go and imitate what they do. So they notice, they might do something more, they might do something crazier so that I do something crazier, and that's more back and forth, back and forth, back and forth interaction that we have to serve and return back together. Now you might be saying, well, Jacqui, how do we get to words from there? Because I don't really see what that's doing besides just having a good playtime. Playtime is amazing, and also when we're doing this back and forth interaction, what we're doing is increasing this thing that's called joint attention. Joint attention is probably the single greatest predictor for language skills and learning skills. So joint attention is your ability to be focused on an activity with another person. So when we are imitating, we are helping improve a child's joint attention skills. So we're giving them something that they can look at, that is interesting to them, motivating for them, and for ourselves. So I love imitation. And then the other thing is, after you've been doing that for a while, you can also just throw in something a little bit different and see if they imitate you back. You might do that in the same activity, or you might do it the next day or whatever. So with the same jellyfish example, maybe, her son really just likes to drag it along, and then maybe my jellyfish every once in a while will attack. That's a great word to throw in, and it's a great new action. So I'm extending their play, I'm giving them a different idea and seeing if they can imitate me, which is great, right? And I'm also expanding their thinking and their vocabulary. Okay, I think this is my last one because I do want to have plenty of time for questions. This is called the interpret strategy. I'm going to play a little bit of a longer clip from the video that I showed you from before, but to just kind of give you an idea before we play it. Interpreting is being able to layer on language for the initiations that your child is making. So a lot of times children aren't maybe, like even if they are using words, sometimes it's not like a full sentence like you want. But what we're doing is we're putting ourselves in the perspective of our child, and we're saying, what do I think he's saying? If he could say it, what would he be saying? And we're giving them that language. I like to give it from their point of view. So like if a child is, laying on the floor, and then I would say, I'm tired, or I'm bored, right? Not you're tired, you're bored. I'm tired, I'm bored. So I give them the language that they might need to express, right? Children who lead, they get the language that they need. So when you follow what the child is saying and you layer on words to that, then you're giving them something that they actually really want to know, need to know, and will remember.